Views expressed and the opinions given by the individual host and their guests do not necessarily reflect those of ParaX, its affiliates, or its sponsors.
Supernatural, metaphysical, paranormal. You know, all those things you've been wondering about? Are you ready to go deeper into the realms of the unknown? I hope you've got your walking shoes on, because life is an adventure, and this is the journey. Come on, let's go. Hello and welcome to the show, everyone. It's Wednesday night, and this is the Journey Radio Show. I'm Jen Cruz, your host tonight, and of course, I've got my trusty teammate, Jenna Grover. Hi, Jenna.
Well, hello. I'm super, super duper excited to be here tonight. I am so stoked. We have one of my personal friends. Uh, I'll let you continue to kind of introduce him. His name is Ted, but I'll let you go on and introduce him.
Yes, we've got, well, he's my friend too.
Well, he's more mine.
Okay, no fighting, ladies. No fighting, ladies.
Fighting over him already.
She says you're more her friend, Ted. I don't know. Anyway, so we've got Ted Benson. He's a paranormal investigator, minister, radio host, and author. He is very passionate about the unknown and loves to lecture on the subject. 30 years of dedication and investing himself into this field has driven him to start writing to capture his techniques and what he believes. He's a skeptical investigator that believes experiments with an open mind, not limited to today's gadgets, but also old school techniques, may someday lead the field in the right direction. Lectures and interviews on podcasts, radio, and events allows him to express his simple but no-nonsense theories about the paranormal. Ted has also been seen on the television series Paranormal Survivor on Destination America TV and the Travel Channel. He's been interviewed by Coast to Coast with George Noory. That's exciting.
Mm-hmm.
So without further ado, let's bring Ted on. Hi, Ted.
Hello.
Hi.
I wanted to make some corrections because that's an old bio. 35 years in the paranormal, and also Bigfoot research. And I've also recently been on Ghost Nation with Jason Haas and Tango and Steve. So I've also been on with them as well.
Nice.
I missed them.
Mm. Yeah, so not to toot my own horn. I'm just joking. But yeah, so, I've been here a long time, and I do things differently than most paranormal investigators, and I think that's what makes me stand out in a crowd.
Well, I tell you what, you tower over the crowd anyway. This man is so tall. He makes me feel tiny.
Not only that, your personality is so big. I absolutely love it. I mean, this guy is truly a one-of-a-kind guy. We are so lucky to even know you, Ted. So thank you so much. Yeah, I'm really excited to have you in my life. Yep, that's mine. I'm kidding. Oh, but seriously, you've got so much information and we only have an hour. Where do you want to start, Ted?
We can start pretty much wherever you ladies would like to go. I mean, you can ask whatever you want, and I'll follow your lead, I guess. I guess that's the best way to do it. I'm pretty easy, so yeah, whatever you guys want to do.
Awesome.
Alrighty.
Well, okay, so you got into the paranormal, and you're into Bigfoot. Which came first?
Actually, paranormal, study of ghosts, and things that can't be explained is probably the best way to put it. Things that when I was a child, I kind of got drawn into by accident because my grandmother came to me, and I had no idea that she had already passed. She came in my bedroom while I was falling asleep. You know, that part where REM starts and all that, and she came in like she normally did and kissed me on the forehead and said, I love you and good night. And I said, I love you too, Grandma. She goes, you be good, Teddy. And I'm like, okay. And I didn't think anything really off, but still, after I thought about it, something wasn't right. So the next morning I said, "Hey, where's Grandma?" And my parents sat me down and said, "She passed yesterday afternoon." I go, She couldn't have. She was in my bedroom last night."
Oh, wow.
So that's how it started. And I think I was 7 or 8.
I
And
was just.
then, oh, sorry, go ahead.
Oh, no, no. I was just going to ask you how old you were, and is
Yeah.
that how it all kind of started too with gifts?
Everything. It was strange how things just kind of fell into place, I guess is the best way to put it. All through my school years and then high school, and then leaving high school to go into college is when things really amped up for me, when I decided to dig a little deeper. But when you come out of school, other things, you're a teenager and other things kind of catch your mind, and you move on to other things. I took a small break from being like right there researching as much as I did, and I ended up involving myself in some other things like you do when you come out of school. You have to have a job, you have to figure out a car and where you're going to live and all that other stuff, so that took some time.
Mm-hmm.
um, and then I incorporated music into my life. And when music started coming into my life, that's where the two kind of meshed, and I started noticing more things. And I really didn't put my finger on it until probably in late 30s, that music and the paranormal have a connection. And it's something that we need to experiment more on. So, um, I traveled the world for, well, east coast of the states for 18 years with a band, and also did a lot of research and investigating while I had my time down while I was in other states, and came back home, and now I'm running a network. So, and writing books and doing lectures and all that other stuff. So yeah, it's been a long haul, but it's been fun, and I've gained a lot over the years, a lot more knowledge, becoming more wise, as they say. And I love it. I love it. Wouldn't
That,
change it.
that's
That's awesome.
exciting. That's so. What do you think is the most inspiring or shocking thing that you've realized in your paranormal investigating?
With all the years that I've been doing this, there's a couple things. One of them that still bothers me to this day is seeing my grandmother at 7 years old. That was the whole reason that I started researching, starting reading all the books I could on ghosts and stories, and whether, whether it be poetry or a short story or anything that I can find as fact, science books, watching In Search Of. I mean, just so many different things that's out there. And it sounds like every other paranormal investigator story, but back then it's what you had. You didn't have a whole lot. You couldn't go to the church. You couldn't go to the minister or the priest. They'd lock you up. I mean, they call you crazy. Um, and then I discovered some other things. I discovered lectures with people that claim to have seen spirits and ghosts and all that stuff. And colleges put them in their, big rec halls so that you could go there and check them out. So that's how I learned. I started to just, when I noticed something was publicated to where I could go, I went, and I tried to suck like a sponge, suck in as much information as I could. And then ultimately it came down to where, what, if I'm really going to learn, I've got to do it on my own. I need to get out there and do the experiments. I need to start taking my own notes and decide what's real myself. My grandmother taught me at a very young age. She was Seneca Indian first off, so she had very simple ways of talking to you. And pretty much what she said was that in every story or every tale, there's an ounce of truth in it for you to figure out what it is. So you take your own truths from every story. And so that's what I did. And so to this day, I still do the same thing.
Very
Well,
cool.
I think that is a great piece of advice. I mean, we really do. We do need to take those and turn everything into a story, right?
Well, there's things out there with people that, I mean, you can sit and watch any paranormal show that you want on TV today. There's so many of them. You can listen to podcasts. There's what, 70,000 podcasts today that are out there, which is amazing. And there's a majority of them that are paranormal. Not all of them, but there's a big chunk of them that are. And you can listen to opinions from one person to another. And to me, if you listen to them, don't believe everything that you hear, but take what you think is the truth, and use that as kind of like a guideline or a stair, or a step to help you go to the direction that you're going. That's the best way. And hopefully you'll come up with something, better than the rest of us have, because after 35 years, I still am not any closer to where I was when I was 7 years old. It's because we just don't know. We don't have the information. We don't have the technology. We can sit here and say we believe in ghosts, we believe in UFOs and aliens and Bigfoot and the Mothman and I don't know, whatever other cryptid is out there. But unfortunately, excuse me, we can't prove that any of them exist in any way, shape, or form. There's no way to prove it. So we have to decide what our truth is. We have to decide what we're going to follow. And hopefully someday we'll end up with the truth or a piece of the truth to show everybody else. It's just tough. It's a field that just, it's scary out there.
It is. And have you, I know Jen kind of hit this question before, but what is the scariest thing that you found you've experienced? Have you not been scared at all?
I have, but it's not like you would think. I mean, it's more of an uneasy feeling. If anything, not really scared. There's been a couple things. I saw a large black shadow crawl up a wall and onto the ceiling.
Jen and I are like, yep.
I've heard a bipedal creature heavier than myself, and I'm a tall, big guy, and I heard this running away in a swamp. Not more than 45 minutes from where I sit right now.
Wow.
I have seen things go from one spot to another and don't know how it happened. But these are little things that when you're a paranormal investigator, and to me, when I want to clarify something, because there's a lot of separation in the paranormal. In the paranormal, as far as I'm concerned, it all falls underneath the actual title, which is the unknown. Okay, it's not the paranormal ghost or the paranormal Bigfoot or the paranormal whatever. All of those fall underneath the unknown. So maybe I should be calling myself an unknown investigator. I don't know. It just sounds funny. But Bigfoot, UFOs, aliens, ghost hauntings, the pig man, the dogman, all of those things all fall underneath the category of paranormal. No matter what anybody else says, it really does, and that's what I believe. It's my opinion, of course. So for me, being in this field and what I do, actually, I'm going to say community, because field is just, it doesn't feel right anymore. But in this community, that there are so many different pockets of new things that spring up all the time in the paranormal that we have to keep our notes, we have to keep records, we have to really put our work and our elbow grease into this stuff, because there's just too much of people saying, I saw it, so it's true.
Yes.
No, it isn't. Give me the proof.
So how would you expect people, and because I think about this too, how do you expect people to record the information that they're receiving? Because like for us, we're going to a certain area, it's easier for us to record.
Well,
but then how do you add that in to say
it's tough with it's tough being a psychic medium and trying to catalog what you're feeling or seeing. Okay. We all know this. It's damn near impossible to prove anything unless you have what I like to call arrows. And arrows, if you think about what an arrow points you to a direction. Okay. So if you come up with, say, an arrow, which is something that you hear or see or sense, use that to point you to a direction to validate what is there. If you can't validate it, unfortunately, no matter how blue in the face we talk, there's going to be so much skepticism and so much that is said that they're not going to believe you. And unfortunately, in the science field, psychic mediums are at the bottom of the food chain. They can't prove anything. And it's unfortunate because I think there's so many gifted people out there that feel things, that see things, that hear things, even dream things, and it's just it's just tough that it's not being taken serious. Dr. Hans Holzer was one of the only paranormal investigators in the world that used psychic mediums in his investigations and recorded what they felt, what they saw, what they heard, and used that as evidence. And today, the Holzer files, which is by Alexandra Holzer, the daughter of Dr. Hans Holzer, it's actually brought all of his files back to life. And she's actually using them to go back to those cases and using a psychic medium, to try and connect to where his medium left off or where they left off. I think the experimentation that we have as in people, period, whether you're a psychic medium, Joe Schmo off the street, a paranormal investigator, a police officer, whatever you are, we all have something to give. We all have something to lay on the table for every single one of us to learn from. And I think that is where it comes to in the end with all of it. All of us lay our cards on the table. And once we can do that without criticizing and labeling each other and calling each other names, then maybe we'll get somewhere. That's
Definitely.
how I
feel. You summed it up. I'm sorry. That's a beautiful statement.
I think that a lot of times people, when they have their own personal experience, that becomes real for them at that point.
Oh, definitely.
And you can watch whatever you want to watch on TV or whatever, but unless you have that personal experience, you're always going to have that skepticism.
Oh, yeah.
And so I encourage people to, if your loved one dies, ask them to give you a sign, that only they would know.
Right.
And I've had quite a few interactions like that, like when one of my best friends died a few years back, she was in my bathroom telling me she was dead in her apartment. And I was like, nope, I'm imagining this. Nope, that's not true. And then I told my mom, I think that something happened to her, and just kept on, she just kept in my ear that she was dead in an apartment. And so we went over there and she was. So, those kinds of things those are real to me when that happens to you.
And I totally understand. I've had something similar. But unfortunately, no matter what we say, like I said before, is we're the ones that are gonna take those as truths, and everybody else is gonna look at us crazy. Science wants more.
Yes.
And we will never, to this point, we will never be able to prove that ghosts exist, and even at some point Bigfoot or UFOs or aliens, because there just isn't enough there. First off, let's go back and talk about ghosts, like to the point where we don't even know what they're made of. We don't know how to track them. We don't know how to even start, because if they're really there, how can we tell? How can we find them? Now, most people say, well, you listen to a psychic medium and they'll point you in the direction. They can hear them. They can sense them. Yeah, we know this, but how can we prove that what the psychic medium is hearing is actually there? And it's tough to do. I remember, I think it was Ghost Hunters did it, where they had a psychic medium in a chair, if I remember correctly. And Jason Haas was sitting opposite chair, and they put the thermal camera on them and said, if you're really a psychic medium, then I want you to push your energy towards me, and we should be able to see it through the thermal camera. And it was funny because they did show some energy moving towards Jason, and then you saw where Jason was kind of pushing it back. And it was weird the way it looked, but can we say that that's fact? I guess we can say yes, but then there's still going to be that other half that says It was something that was put on, you know. We
Yeah.
don't know. Unfortunately, ladies, we sit in a world where we still have to fight for every inch that we tread on. And it's going to be that way for a long time. Will we ever explain ghosts? Not in my lifetime. Not in my godson's lifetime. I think it's going to be a long ways away. Bigfoot, maybe in 100 years,
Do you
maybe
think it'll take
200
that long?
years. I think it's going to take a long time because
Oh.
the way the skeptics are right now, the way they're concerned is he doesn't exist and it's never going to be found. But yet there's people that have some really phenomenal evidence. Well, I'm going to say I'm using that loosely only because people are going to argue, but they have gotten some stuff that will point or arrow itself to that direction.
Nice.
And I myself, do I believe Bigfoot exists? I would like to think so. That's my answer. Do I think ghosts exist? In my mind, it already says yes. But proving that, I'm on the fence. I have to stay skeptical. I have to stay where nobody wants to be.
Yeah. You know, it's funny though, because I mean, I know it's to prove something. Well, when you get information, the biggest thing is getting that confirmation, right? So you're
Mm-hmm.
given this information, and to you and the person that it's happening between, especially when there's someone coming across and giving you that message for that person, I mean, there's so many accurate details that you're receiving as a receiver that, I mean, you just wonder, how could it be wrong? You couldn't make that stuff up. You know
Well,
what I mean?
let's go back to a certain person that was very, very famous, and this is something that um, was under scrutiny for a long time. Sylvia Brown.
Mm,
Okay. She was one of the most well-known psychic mediums in the world.
mm-hmm.
And at the end of it all, she was considered a scam artist, a sham. So, was she really getting messages? I don't know. I wasn't in her head. I wasn't there. I didn't know. How accurate was she? Well, according to all the evidence that these people had pulled, less than 30%. And that's because the majority of it was really good guesses, according to them.
Yeah, but
Watching physical movements, eyes, you know, all that stuff that you learn as a police officer and investigator. This is what they say. Do I believe in it? I have no idea. I know that Duke University started something a long time ago where they were doing research with psychic mediums, and that was their paranormal studies. And it was psychic mediums. It was ESP. It was psychokinesis, telekinesis. There were so many things that they did for many, 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 many years until they got rid of it. It's now been transferred to a private industry.
yeah, but Sylvia Braun did write in her book, was it the End of Days book, her predictions for the future, that about the 2020 virus, the pneumonia-like virus that would
Mm-hmm.
come and disappear as quickly as it came, and then she said it would come back again in 10 years.
It's interesting, huh?
It is interesting. You know, that seems pretty spot on.
Mm-hmm.
But
I
you know,
can't. I can't weigh left or right on it either way because I don't have the information or the facts. All I try to do as being a paranormal investigator is to collect what information I can, create my experiments to see if I can duplicate them. If I can't, then I have to start all over again. I just don't want to get false hope or false information. You know, so I do my job the best way I can. And that's all I can ask out of anybody else that's in the field, you know, is to do the same thing. You know, can I say that I believe that that's true? Well, if it's in a book that she wrote, firsthand knowledge, it's in a book that I mean, obviously she knew something that nobody else did.
well,
Right?
and it showed up in other books too, like that, but they weren't like prediction books.
Right.
People wrote books about a virus that came out of Wuhan that was like this. It ended up in like a TV series about
Yeah.
the Wuhan virus. And you know, I thought about that. How is that possible? And then that just tells me mass consciousness.
Right.
It confirms to me that when something is known, it's in the mass consciousness, and people who are open to receiving information can become aware of that, and maybe they think it's their own idea. It just comes in as an idea, you know?
I get it. I get it 110%.
Mhm.
You know, I sit here every single day and I listen to stories and I listen to people's complaints and how they beat other teams down and how they it really surprises me that we've even gotten as far as we have with anything, to be honest with you, because unfortunately the humans are, first of all, they're selfish creatures. It's all about me, 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 me. Second off, we know how we are. We know that it's sorry, I just said that confirmation on that truck.
Oh, funny.
They got him in custody.
Good.
So good. So the next thing about people, human beings, is that we're animals. So the animalistic nature that we carry around with us every single day does have a grip on us, and it does play a role in every single decision and the things that we do all day long. So we have to stop thinking about certain things in a certain way and kind of look at who we are as an individual and what rules us. We know that emotions run deeper in us than any other thing in the world. Emotions, we are an emotional creature. And that basically pushes us every single day in what we do.
Yeah.
And without emotions, we would be, I don't know, a drone, something that's pushed around by somebody else.
Yeah.
We have free will. We have emotions. So we're able to connect or deconnect, if that's what you want to call it, from everything else. But we're selfish creatures. We know what we want. We'll do what we have to do to get there, and it doesn't matter who we step on to get there.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, it's true.
Yeah, but you mentioned in the future, one day, maybe in the future when we stop doing all these horrible things to each other, then it's going to be this great life. How in the world, what is your thought on how we can fix some of this crap that's
I don't
happening right
think we
now?
can, to be honest with you, right now. I think it's kind of like this is going to sound really bad. It's sort of like a virus.
Oh.
Yeah, exactly.
Not
Here's
really
Teddy.
everyone.
Here's Teddy's prediction. No, no, that was a joke. It pretty much it's going to take a lot to change the world, and it'll be a long time. Unfortunately, it may be a big war that wipes us all out, and we start all over again. We all crawl out of the pond one more time. It may take UFOs coming down here with little aliens and putting us in farms and saying, "Hey, go to work." Who knows? I just know as it sits right now that we hurt each other so much every single day, whether it's intentional or not. We do, and that's a negative thing. And if we want to talk about how energy rules the world, or emotions rule the world, start there. Start at our own energy and what we put out there. The day that we wake up cranky, okay? The day that things don't go right and we just say, dang it, and we just get back in bed. Or you're driving to work and somebody crashes into your car. It one leads to another. It's just energy is energy, and we know it's out there. And you always hear, hey, think positive thoughts. If you think positive thoughts, that's going to, spread out to other people. Smile at a stranger down the street, you know, um, tickle your kids, tickle your wife or your boyfriend, make them laugh, because laughing is the best medicine. Um, More positive things. Yes, we need that stuff. And I think that's going to help us in the long run. But at the same time, we have to understand that where there's one over here, there's always something else over here. It's always black and white, salt and pepper, yin and yang. We just have to find a balance. We really do. And once we find that balance, then the world will be better. But right now, it's just not going to work.
So basically, you're just saying we all need to check ourselves.
Yeah,
Right.
pretty much.
And with that, we need to go to our break. So stay tuned, everybody. We'll be right back with Ted Van Son. Yay, good job.
I'll be right back. I have to go do something.
All
I
right.
talk too much.
You talk a lot, and that's a good thing for radio. Yes.
Mm. Oh,
Put on my golden lip gloss.
there you go.
Uh-huh. Mm-hmm. Did Jade's show get started okay?
That's what I'm looking at right now. Because she's saying, "Oh my God, I'm nervous. I'm shitting myself." I'm sorry. Sorry.
Okay.
Where is it? I don't see it. Mm-hmm.
It was so hot here today. It's crazy.
Oh, it's been real hot.
All right, do I sound okay? God darn. Oh, I know. You little stinker butt. I thought maybe that sound was coming from me, so I changed.
Derek is correct. This is. I'm not nervous at all.
10. And roll.
Welcome back to the show, everyone. This is the Journey Radio Show, and hey, we're the She-Squatchers. Won't you check us out online at She-Squatchers.com? And right at the top of the page, you're going to find links to both our event page, our YouTube channel. Come check out our YouTube channel at She-Squatchers Official. Click the red subscribe button and follow us there. We're still in that YouTube subscriber race now until October. It got pushed from April to October because the event date changed because of COVID. So we're still in the race. We still want to win. Come subscribe to our channel and help us out. And then, hey, come to our Facebook page and click like and follow us there because that's where we're going to post most of our up-to-date. Here's what's going on with the She-Squatchers. So, hey, we've got Ted Van Son on with us tonight. He's a paranormal investigator. He also does some Bigfoot stuff, which I cannot wait to ask him about. So let's bring Ted back on. Hey, Ted.
Hey,
Hey.
I'm here.
So I want to hear what you've got to share with us about Bigfoot. That's my favorite subject in the world right now.
Oh, no way. Really? She-Squatchers, come on. I've had one experience that I did explain to you a little earlier, and it kind of it scared. Well, it didn't scare me. It caught me off guard. I was in a location. It was actually a location where there was a haunted house, and we were working the case at the house, and then we had discovered some footprints, and we're like, no way, really, Bigfoot too? Come on, no. And so we actually went, did some investigating, looked around, and this continued on for like 3 or 4 weeks of finding things and just walking around, trying to trace it. And I actually called in my buddies, my friends. I'm a part of Squatch Detective out of New York, ran by Steve Culls. It's his organization. And we called in a couple of the other guys, and they came out, and we walked this area, which is connected to a swamp. And the swamp is about 400 million years old. I mean, this swamp they were digging dinosaur bones out of the swamp for years. And so the guys came, and we walked, and as we were walking along the sideline of the swamp, and we're probably a half a mile in, one of the guys stopped, and we're talking, we're chatting, and I'm like, all right, well, somebody had to go do something, and with a tree, and if you catch my meaning, okay, leaking on the tree, okay, All right. All right. Okay. So, anyways, he did his business, and as he was zipping, this thing took off, and it just shocked us. I mean, it was bipedal, it was very heavy, and it was running away. And we couldn't get there fast enough with any type of camera or anything to even try and get a photo of it. So we walked in as far as we could to see if maybe where we thought it was standing, where we could see if we could find more tracks and so on and so forth. But unfortunately, where it was standing was just inside the swamp area. And for us, it wouldn't have been a good spot for us to be in. So that was my story with Bigfoot. But as a kid, I've always been interested in Bigfoot. Always thought that he could exist or it could exist. I used to watch a kid show called Bigfoot and Wild Boy, which is still on YouTube if you want to look it up. It was fun. It was called Bigfoot and Wild Boy. And it was just a kid's morning show. But it wasn't a cartoon. It was actual characters, actual people, dressed up as Bigfoot and Wild Boy. And I don't know. I was kind of hooked, but I've always been into monsters anyway. So Godzilla was my hero, So Bigfoot was just one of those other ones, But I've been on several cases like that where, as well as I do, you get out in some of these places where people claim that they've seen a Bigfoot and stuff. And 99% of the time you go there, there might be a broken branch. There might be something that looks like something stepped there, but you really can't tell because there's no deep imprint. There's nothing that you can cast. But I like stories too. So, when they tell me the story, I just take it and I write it down and I put it away. So that maybe someday down the road, if I ever get called to there again, I can say, hey, this person 10 years ago or 5 years ago claimed the same thing.
So are you like you're keeping all this information? How are you keeping it though? Are you keeping it on a computer or
a lot of it
paperwork?
is kept both ways. You start out a file, and I used to do everything hard copy with paper in files, vanilla files. Now, because of computers and stuff, we're able to put everything on thumb drives, which is really easy. Or you can put them on disk. Either way, we had a fire when I was in my 20s and late 20s and lost everything that I was researching before that.
Oh, no.
So everything that I had prior, I had to kind of sit down and do a memory thing. But luckily, I keep journals. So I would make notes so I could go back and say, oh, that's right.
Nice.
So, yeah. So that's one of the things in the paranormal or unknown that I would like to see more of us do is take notes, keep records of what we do.
And share.
You have to share. I mean, there's another show on like opposite of yours. Actually, I think they just went off the air and they were talking about the same thing. They were talking about how teams have just became selfish. They don't want to help. They don't want to, give anybody the time of day. How do they expect the future of any of these to carry on, to survive, if you don't transfer the information?
Yes.
Goes to the grave.
Well, and it's like a lot of the Native American stories, that's a lot of those are passed down verbally. They're not, right, Jen? I mean, those aren't literally written down, some of those stories. They're literally, you're given those stories at a young age and you repeat them. Isn't that right? Or how does that work?
Typically winter was the storytelling time. And they would sit and listen to the elders tell stories. And, everybody would sit and listen, not just the children.
Yeah.
So, I mean, this was a way of entertainment, but also a way of passing down the oral history. So it's interesting because when there was that interruption where the children were taken and put into mission schools and the adults were not allowed to share the culture and pass on those stories and language to the children anymore, a lot of the things were lost. And so it's interesting because like the Ojibwe, some call the Chippewa, there's so many different reservations in Minnesota, Wisconsin, and North Dakota that are Ojibwe, and even into Canada. And it's interesting that, I receive stories from different reservations and come to find big stories, like listen to stories at different events from elders telling, and then going back to my own reservation and talking about the first birch bark basket story, and they have this blank look on their face because they've never heard it. So I was in shock. Like, you haven't heard the first birch bark basket story. And so then I ended up telling the story, and it had so many different levels of wisdom in it. Like, it even contained the instructions on how to harvest birch bark from a tree safely, and how to make a band-aid for the tree so that it could heal for after you took some bark. And, so, I mean, it had so many levels of information that, I don't think I grasped on the first or second telling. And then even as I told the story, I was like, hey, I didn't realize it contained that. It's just like it took on another meaning to me the more and more, even when I tell it now, I'm like, oh, hey, even though the information is there and I'm telling a story, it's like, oh, I didn't even think about that aspect of it before. So, I mean, so many levels of wisdom that are given down to the future generations through those stories. And some of them are so old. Just a wealth of information, and I know some people are now writing them down. I know that there's even some native grants out there for people to go and talk to the elders and start documenting the stories that they tell. So that's nice. A good thing. That's a good thing. But I think of all the stories that have probably been lost, which is sad too.
And that's exactly it. All of this is being lost if it's not shared. I think that was our whole point. What were you going to say, Tim?
Well, one of the things today that you can be thankful for is the internet, because once it gets on the internet, it's there forever. And one of the things that I know from the Seneca Nation up here with the Iroquois and Mohawk and everything else is that with their stories, it is passed on from generation to generation today. They were able to keep some of that stuff and pass it on no matter what. And it's nice. Plus, they have constantly, there isn't any right now because of the whole COVID thing, but there was always something going on here where you could go to story time, you could go, and go to their picnics and their rounds and stuff like that. And but I know even just my own family from the stories from the hills, like, yes, we have hills in New York, where some of these people lived forever with families, and it was generation after generation on the same land. The stories of Sasquatch, of Bigfoot, and same with UFOs and ghosts. I mean, they have so many stories about ghosts and people from the past, especially when they do their dances and they feel the elders dancing with them, the people from the past, and things like that. There's just so many interesting things about their culture that really needs to be saved on the internet as well, because there's so much that we could learn from them. And when my grandmother used to tell stories, it was the time when we got together and all of us kids sat on the ground or at the picnic table when grandma spoke. We listened. And it was because she was wise, first off, but she was also the household leader. She ran the roost. That's the way it is for some of these nations. It was the female that held all of it. And she did. She held every piece of it. And if somebody got out of hand, she was the one to teach them a lesson as well. But we learned it all from her. And I'm thankful that some of that stuff that I was able to hear and see, and like with my mother, I've been able to help her keep some of that as a memories. I remind her all the time because she's going through that whole dementia thing right now. But, history is history, and our history we need to keep and tell our stories for our kids. And that's why I try to document as much as possible on thumb drives, on CDs, or on the internet. It's just so important.
What you might think is interesting is that the what is his name now? Oh, the poet Longfellow, the poet.
Longfellow, yeah.
Did you know that where he got his stories from was from an Ojibwe woman who told him the stories, and she knew that he would write them down and
That's
preserve
good.
them. That's
That's
good.
awesome.
But in some of his stories, he talks about the ghosts and that come from the spirit world, and that they come to tell the people that they have to let them go because they are making them sad in the spirit world with all of their sadness, that they have to grieve and let them go. And so then they have like instructions on how to do that. And
What I find, sorry to interrupt,
ahead.
but what I find amazing about that is that if you stop and think about the way our world runs right now, it's so fast. And we have to stop and we have to think about everything. We have to use all these words to get a simple point across. But if you sit down and listen to an old Indian woman, simple words, very plain, and she can tell you in story in less words than we can actually have a sentence of just something. Because she can paint a picture just so beautifully with simple words, you know? Like you were saying. It's like it was just sad. And you could it just pulled you in right then and there with one word.
Yep.
You know?
Very true, very true. But I spent a lot of time reading Longfellow's poems after I learned that. So, and seeing the traditions that I've experienced in the Native culture up here are actually in a lot of that. So it's very, very interesting. So, yeah, very cool. Very cool.
So if anybody's interested, I have books.
Tell us about your
I'm an
books,
author.
Dad.
You're everything. You're awesome. Tell us.
Yeah, the first book I wrote, I co-authored with another gentleman from the UK. He works for the Department of Defense, and in the UK. So we wrote a book called Flashlight Recorder and Comfortable Shoes, and basically it's kind of like a handbook to get you started. Even if you've been an investigator for a long time, you can use it as a refresher, you know, to kind of refresh your memory of certain things. And it's written pretty easy, you know, to where most people can read it. Him and I had a difference of opinion on writing certain things, so it was kind of interesting how he actually got the book put together, and his belief in the paranormal is definitely different than mine. But as an overall piece, it meshed well, I guess is the best way to put it. So, and then I decided to write my own afterwards as the only author. Think Outside the Paranormal Box. Wow, I had to stop and think about my own book for a second. So Think Outside the Paranormal Box, and it's something that's used in the paranormal. As far as I'm concerned, it's old school. It's thinking outside the everyday normal thing that we do when we investigate. And there are the same thing when it comes to researching Bigfoot or some of these other cryptids. Stop thinking like everybody else does. Think of something new. Think outside the box. Think outside the paranormal box. That's why I wrote it. Because there are things out there that we just don't know. And if we continue to stay on the same path as Joe Schmo and Robert from, I don't know, wherever, we're not original. We're not stepping outside the box. We're not giving another way of thinking or looking or receiving. And that's what we need to do. So those two books that are out there are available on Amazon and at Barnes & Noble. And again, it's Flashlight Recorder and Comfortable Shoes. And the second one is Think Outside the Paranormal Box.
Very cool. Very cool. So I hope everybody goes and checks those out.
Yeah.
Are they also on an ebook? Somebody asks.
Yes, they are available on ebook as well. Yep. I think actually Amazon's doing a thing right now where you can get them for free or get at least one of them for free. So something along those lines. But yeah, go for it. They're good books. Not because I'm saying I wrote them or anything. You know.
Yeah.
I just so cute.
Actually, I have not gotten those books yet, and I plan on getting those books. I cannot wait to read it. I'm so sorry it took me so long. But yeah, so if you guys are out there, check his books out. I'm going to get them, so you might as well get them, and Jen will get them, and everybody will get them. So.
Yeah, and you know what? Probably the best place that they could probably find. I think there's still a connection on two of the websites. I think GVPI, and it stands for Genesee Valley Paranormal Investigators.org, because we are a nonprofit organization registered through the state of New York. So gvpi.org. I think there's a link there, and then on paratalkradio.com. I think there's a link on both of them where they can actually get a hold of the books, or just put my name in Amazon, Ted Van Son, VANSON, and they should come up.
And then would they be able to also maybe hear some of your music too if they would?
I don't know if any of my music's there or not, but you know what's funny about that, Jenna,
What?
since you brought that up?
Yeah.
I kind of went back to the past, and I bought myself a cassette player because I have all this music from when I started back in 1993, and I actually started putting that stuff on the web. It's now being uploaded to the web. So as
Oh,
soon as I have it all up there and ready to go, I'll be sharing as much as I can. I do know that if you go to YouTube and you put in, I think it's GVPIDOTORG. So like dot, you actually have to spell out the word dot. So GVPI.org. If you go there, I believe there's a link to one of my songs that was released in 1999. And it was called Without You. And it should be there. It was
Did you
used
write
for, yeah. And thousands of weddings. People use it for their weddings all the time. I always get thank yous. I always get awesome song and stuff like that. And
Nice.
so I made a little video to go with it. It's kind of cheesy, but you know, it's cool. Yeah, and it is me singing it. It's not.
You know, I have to say you are up there with the most. What is it? The most interesting man. I think he's out now. You're replacing him, so now you need to be on those commercials. Seriously, because you have lived such a huge life, and I'm so thankful that you have.
And you know what? I'm only 54 years old.
Exactly. You're still young.
You know, I have done more in my lifetime than anybody my own age from school and stuff. I look back on that all the time. I mean, I was ordained in 1993.
Wow.
That's a long time ago.
And is that just for New York?
Actually, I think for 3 states. I think it's New York, Pennsylvania, and Maine, I think. But it doesn't matter. I can still wed you if you want to be wed. We can still hit you if you want to be hitched. You know, so yeah, I've done that.
No, thanks. I've been there and done that.
There you go. I want to do that, but unfortunately, he hasn't come around. So, you know,
Yeah.
and you know, as in writing, I've done my books, I've done my singing, I've done my touring, I've been on a stage in front of 74,000 people. I worked with some of the greatest musicians and country artists from 1980 to 2000. I've worked with Keith Urban, Rascal Flatts, Aaron Tippin, Joe Diffie, Sarah Evans. There's just so many of them that I've worked with, and you know, they're all amazing individuals in country music, you know, so I've done it. I've lived it. I could write a biography here pretty soon.
Nice. It would be huge. I have a feeling. Because I know we don't have a lot of time left, but I did want to bring up, you have your own network.
Actually, I'm running the network for John.
Okay.
John, but yes, I say it's my network because I'm doing all the work right now. It's one of those things. I basically kind of fell in my lap because the gentleman owns the actual network. He is a provider of audio and sound and stage lighting and so on and so forth for concerts that go across the world. He provides all that for these big concerts in the United States and the UK. So say a band like Flogging Molly or I don't know, Jeff Healy or somebody that you know they're doing a concert and they need staging, lighting, sound, and all that stuff. That's where John comes in. He provides all that stuff. And, you know, right now, because of the COVID thing, between the musicians not being able to work and losing millions of dollars and thousands of dollars, so is he, every single week, every single month. And it's really taken a toll on the music industry to where it's choking the life out of it, to be honest with you. The only good thing that's come out of this, that if you're a new artist, if you're somebody that's up and coming, it's giving you an opportunity, because this is where all the nationals are, and this is where you normally would be. But because of COVID, you're now up here, and now you're able to get your foot in the door and actually make a name for yourself if you do it right. You got to come out swinging. You know, you got to come out original. So, and the network is awesome. It's John's. It's a perfect little network. It's, you know, got 9 shows. Keeps me busy. I'm up around the clock. I get 2 to 3 hours of sleep a day. But I wouldn't change it for the world. I love it.
Oh
Wouldn't look.
boy. Do you have any open slots for people who think they have
Oh
a
yeah,
great
if anybody's looking for a new network, something different, something new, something exciting, we are not like your typical podcast, and we are considered now video casting and audio casting, not podcasting, because we've kind of meshed the two together to work where it's kind of cohesive. We're working with some great platforms right now, and it's a brand new network, and with a new network, there's things that we're able to do that, we're kind of right on the cutting edge, which I like.
Yeah.
And it's fun. It's fun.
Awesome.
So.
All right. So your website, do you have one directly to you, Ted?
My website, where you can find my bio and all the information, the best one to go to is gvpi.org. That's where my teams are. I have two teams, one based in Hornell, New York, one based out of Avon, New York. Genesee Valley Paranormal Investigators and Maple City GVPI, which is the Hornell version. So we have two teams right now.
And my other question is, you recently were on that Ghost Nation TV show. How did you get invited to be on that?
Actually, Jason is from my town, pretty much, my area. So I've known Jason for a long time. It just so happened that I was called in by Travel Channel. They called me and said, "Hey, we got a case that's pretty close to you. Can you handle it for us?" And I'm like, "Yeah, sure." And what was funny is, like, the day before, the gentleman that actually had the issue called me the day before the network called me. And so when the network called me, I said, "Yeah, his name is David, and this is where he lives." They're like, "How did you know that?" I go, I'm psychic."
Oh, funny. Did they believe you?
So, they said, "No, I think that's amazing." And it to us, it was just meant to be. And believe it or not, it was in the first seasons of Ghost Nation, and it was rated the number one episode.
Nice. That's exciting.
Yeah.
That's exciting.
Yep. So you see this big old redneck up in there. Mm-hmm.
Well, what episode did you say it was?
It's actually called. I think it's called Amelia. I think it's called something like Amelia. Something like Amelia, I think. But it's season 1, episode 10.
Season 1, episode 10. Jenna's writing it down. Gotta find it.
You should be able to find it. Yep.
Gotta go watch Teddy on that.
And there was some interesting evidence that came out of that no one else has ever been able to capture. I'm not going to say evidence because I have not been able to get my hands on it to actually do the experiments with it. It's something that the network kept. That's nothing that I'm going to be able to see. I had to sign off on it. I saw it through the episode and stuff, but this summer when we're able to go, guess where I'm going? I'm going back.
Oh my gosh, that sounds fun.
I'm going back.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
we're so lucky.
And I get to investigate in Ireland come next June.
Shut up. Really?
Yeah.
Yeah, I invited Jenna to actually go with me.
Yeah, and I just don't think I can pull it off unless financial means change, and I'm not going to stop.
Is that next year? You're talking about next year or this year?
June 15th, I think, through the 23rd. Yeah.
This year.
2021.
No, 2021. I can send you the info if you're interested.
Oh gosh, that would be so much fun. But that music tells us we're at the end of the show. We're going to have to talk about that more another time. Thank you so much for joining us, Ted. And I hope you'll check us out next week on Wednesday night right here on the Journey Radio Show. Good night, everyone.
Bye.